Hey, this is Phil from the Gorge. You're listening to a Vulgar Display of Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Vulgar Display of Podcast, live from the Barn Studios in Southeast Missouri. Got a special guest online with us right now. We have Phil from the Gorge. Phil, how are you, man?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Good, and an exciting time for the Gorge right now, especially this week.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. It's been really great. We actually the album dropped this past Friday, and we have a release show coming up on Friday the 4th. And the response has been really awesome. It's been super humbling and very nice to hear people digging the album. So it's been really cool.
New album is Mechanical Fiction, and the release show is this Friday in St. Louis at Off Broadway. Great venue, great place. Always feel welcome and happy there with some great bands, The Lion's Daughter and Blight Future. Friday, August 4th. Doors are at 7, shows at 8. What can we expect at the release show?
Well, it's a nice mix of bands. We were really stoked to get our buds in Blight Future and The Lion's Daughter on. I think it's a nice representation of kind of heavy and extreme music going on in St. Louis right now. Blight Future brings a really nice mix of hardcore, punk, everything in between with some metal vibes in there too. Very aggressive, very fast, high energy. They're all great people. And then The Lion's Daughter, who's been at it for a while too, doing some really cool stuff, and excited to hear some of their, I think they're maybe playing some newer material that's from their upcoming album. And, those guys always put on a great show and are usually kind of scary to watch. I like that they're kind of a scary band, which is a lot of fun. So those two bands are going to be great. And then we're going to be playing down the album. Minus one song, we'll have one song that's left off, but we're playing everything from it in order, and we've been working hard, practicing, getting everything up to par to play for the show, and should be a good time.
And I mentioned off air, our studio is a little bit south of St. Louis, but our coverage area is mostly St. Louis, so St. Louis is home to us. What do you think about the St. Louis music scene as it is now, and maybe even talk a little bit of some past bands that maybe were influences to you or coming up in the music scene?
It's strong. It always has been strong, and I think honestly, when bands talk about influences and things like that, and what kind of pushes them, it's usually like kind of the big ones, right? And we have those too for us. But I think constantly seeing friends bands play in St. Louis that are amazing bands pushing themselves, putting out great music, great art, and just seeing that is inspiring more so than I think maybe, going and seeing our favorite band. Don't get me wrong. I love going to see Meshuggah every single time that I can. But when I can go to a show and be like, man, these are my dudes putting out some really heavy stuff, it really pushes you to kind of go further with your own things and be like, okay, let's keep representing the St. Louis heavy music scene in a proper way. Bands for me, like the bands we have on this, Lion's Daughter, Blight Future, other bands like Hell Night, going back a little bit, bands like our friends in Black Fast, Fister. Gosh, I'm going to do the thing where I probably leave off a whole bunch of stuff. Path of Might, that's really like a big core of the scene. And there's also some like young bands really kind of doing some things now too that are keeping some like real heavy extreme music going forward. I know this band Sawed Off just released an EP.
Yeah.
Pretty punishing, man. It looked like they had a great show too. So it's constantly, I try to make it out as much as I can and see our friends and support them, because it's just it's like, well, damn, these guys are out here ripping it. Like we gotta step up and do the same thing these guys are doing.
Is there a bit of a friendly competition with that? You go out and see one of your buddies' band and they just destroy it. Does it up your game some, and does it make you want to up your game?
I think so. I think we're all supportive of each other, but I think any musician, when they see something that's inspiring, you're like, okay, man, that was good. It's like, all right, well, I gotta make sure I bring it next time. I gotta make sure that I'm on top of my game for this. It's not a competition by any means. It's not, oh, I'm gonna, be better in this band or whatever. It's more so like the inspirational side of things and saying, okay. But then when you get on stage, that's kind of when you have to do the things like, all right, right now, this is my time, and I gotta do it right. So kind of keeping that in mind and being like, I want my friends to walk away, hopefully, with the same kind of like inspiration or mutual admiration that I have for when I see them play. So definitely, it makes you want to stay on top of your game.
And we mentioned off air a mutual friend of ours, Brad Sexton, who has played in many St. Louis bands. He's an absolutely phenomenal drummer, in my opinion, one of the best I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
But I mentioned, years ago, he said, man, you got to check out this band, the Gorge, the Gorge, the Gorge. He kept talking about you over and over and sending praises to you. So I do think you're doing the same thing that you're talking about is maybe you're lighting a little bit of fire under other people's asses too, which I guess is always kind of nice.
Yeah, it's nice to hear. It's always good to hear praise from friends and other, great musicians and things like that. So, hopefully you're doing something a little right, so that people can walk away and say, man, that was, that was a great set or a great show or a great album. Any of those things always feels good to hear that kind of stuff. So always thankful, Brad.
Shout out Brad Sexton. This Friday is like we said, it's your release show, but it's also kind of the kickoff to this 2-week run that you're going on. You guys are going out on tour.
Yep. Yeah, we got a little short little guy here to do some support dates for Mechanical Fiction. So we're heading up kind of north and then east a little bit here. So over the next week, we're starting in Chicago on Sunday. Sound Growler Brewing. I'll run down these real quick here. And then we're in 8-7 on August 7th, 5 o'clock lounge in Cleveland. On the 8th, we're at Dirty Dungarees in Columbus, Ohio. On the 10th, we're at Century Bar in Philadelphia. And then the 11th, we're at the Tubbs in Brooklyn, New York. And then the 12th, we're in the Shred Shed in Pittsburgh. And then the 13th, make our haul back to Bloomington to Night Shop, which is a great club that we've played a couple times now. So, yeah, nice little support run here for the tour. If any of you guys are out there in any of those cities, please come out, say hey, buy an album. We'll hang out and hopefully give you a good show.
You mentioned being fans of Meshuggah, and anybody that listens to you guys' stuff, they're going to hear the technical aspect of your sound and the complexity in it. With you playing guitar and singing, how are you able to accomplish that? And what is your writing process like for that?
Very difficult. So that's probably the most challenging aspect of it. And it's something that it still doesn't really come naturally to me. So we're still pretty traditional, I think, in the sense of a lot of heavy bands where really the music and the riffs come first. And then once we start to get a song structure together, it kind of starts with basically just me doing vocalizations, like kind of screaming in ways that I know I can kind of fit the rhythms over the riffs and like, okay, well, this works this way. I can do this type of thing. And then once I kind of have an idea of how the vocal rhythms can fit, then it's kind of a puzzle game of fitting lyrical ideas that I have into the rhythms that were there. So in some ways, it can be kind of limiting because I can't be as maybe freeform with the lyric writing process. But in other ways, it forces me to be concise and think very carefully about kind of word choices and like, what am I trying to convey with this song? And how can I do it in literally this number of syllables or letters or whatever it is for the rhythm that fits the riff right there. So it's challenging, but I think it ends up from a songwriting standpoint being pretty cohesive because everything has to be very kind of locked in one single way. Maybe there's not as much room for improvisation and things like that, but it ends up being the way that we have to do it so that I can sing and play at the same time.
I saw your interview with Chill Dude on the Couch. Shout out Chill Dude on the Couch, by the way. And
it was a great one.
Yeah, he's awesome. And you mentioned something on there that really stuck with me. It's very technical, like we're talking about, complex, but the songs are still important to you. These aren't pieces that are just strung together. These are songs that you guys are writing. And is that difficult for you to make songs out of some of the parts that you might have?
Yes and no. I think getting to the initial ideas of some of the riffs and things is the hard part, maybe kind of like the germination process. But once we have an idea, we've been playing together for so long as friends and musicians that we work really well with kind of understanding what direction a song needs to take. And we're always kind of coming back to the idea of like, listen, what is the kind of musical theme of this song, and how can we kind of just always circle back to this in a musical way. So I think that's really always been at the forefront of our writing process, which then makes it that if we're writing something and everything is kind of coming together in a nice way, if we do want to take like a left turn, then we also know that, okay, here's how we can get really away from this primary theme and have it be a decently kind of jarring, listening experience where it's like, okay, this can have this random section or this, frantic bit and still come back to a main theme of the song and have it all function within the structure. I think a lot of the bands that we really like and cite as influences do that as well. And I think that's where we really take that from. It's just like, listen, at the end of the day, we want to write something that is, heavy, technical to a degree, but not kind of, with the wankery going on. But still have it be a memorable song in that aspect. So I think that's really the driving force for everything, which is a good challenge for this type of music at times. I like plenty of bands that have this kind of chaotic sound to them, and they do it well. But for us, I think our sweet spot is really, writing something that's a little more down the middle in terms of song structure and things like that.
And I understand you guys to be jazz fans. Do you feel that jazz musicians and metal, do you feel that they're sort of kindred spirits in a way?
Yeah. I mean, I think with a lot of musicians, be it metal, jazz, classical, anybody that's like really pushing themselves to their own technical limits, to their own creative limits, is seeking a challenge. And that's what we kind of love with both listening and playing some jazz and other types of music that we've studied. It's all about what can I do to push myself to the furthest degrees of my musicality while still honoring some of the things that we really like about maybe like just a really dumb, ignorant riff that just makes you want to bang your head. So trying to meld those two worlds together is again another challenge, but something that's really rewarding, I think, when it's done well. But ultimately, yeah, I think it just comes down to this, really trying to challenge yourself as much as possible. Like the music we write is ultimately for ourselves, to be selfish, and if other people like it, that's great. But we're always, writing what we think sounds cool and saying, what have we not done to push ourselves before, and can we go to that next level? And so far, it's served us decently well to do that. So we're going to continue to try to challenge ourselves musically and thematically and creatively and see where it goes.
With the risk of sounding cliche, is your music sort of a journey? Is it a epic, sort of story that you're telling?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, like the album definitely has some themes lyrically in terms of, wrestling with some tough subjects of kind of mental health and things like that. And they're all kind of centralized around that. And then, creating the overall picture of it is definitely a thing where we want the songs to be their own individual, entities, but also have kind of a cohesion through it. It's not a concept album in the true sense of this big long song or anything like that, which we like plenty of albums that do that kind of thing. But these are definitely, individual written songs that weren't necessarily say, okay, this is going to go to this one, to this one, to this one. However, it's still, we put a lot of thought into kind of the pacing, album order. Okay, what flows well into this, and trying to keep an overall vibe going forward with the compositions is definitely something we think about. And it's something we've talked about in regards to writing the next one, which we're kind of, just have some riffs and talking about, but it's like, listen, I'm kind of feeling this kind of feel for the entire thing. So then we kind of have, an overall framework to work within, and then again, kind of fill in the blanks that way. So, yeah.
As epic and, intricate as your songs and music are, visually, you represent something that's pretty simplistic, like your videos, your album cover, even some of your performances. Is that intentional, or is that just kind of how things work?
I would say a little of both. We definitely have never been a flashy band. We're just a bunch of nerds getting together, play some heavy music. And, sometimes we could probably serve ourselves better to have a little more kind of theatrics and things like that. But at the end of the day, we're just four dudes playing music together. So we used to be a little more hardline about that kind of thing. I was thinking about this the other day, actually, in regards to like album production and stuff, where I think our first full length, we didn't track it live, but everything on the album was pretty much exactly as we would play it live. Think back to like Rage Against the Machine would do a thing where they like, okay, if we can't play it live, we're not going to put it on the album. So all of that stuff is pretty much as is. And I completely, I still respect that kind of approach, but where we've kind of grown in that, it's like, using the studio as a tool to create kind of bigger things than what maybe we can create, in a true live setting. We can still represent the songs, I think, as they're meant to be, but not being afraid to like, okay, let's put a little keyboard part under this, or let's overdub these guitars, or put this weird effect on here, just for the kind of the overall big picture of it. So with the album artwork, that just ended up being kind of what the artists, with our prompt that we gave him, came up with, and we just said, man, that looks great. That's kind of, it's a not a complicated, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to diminish his work on this. But it is obviously just kind of this single image, but it just kind of spoke to us in terms of like, this is what we're kind of going for to represent the vibe of the album. So, nothing too fancy all the way around. And we kind of hopefully just let the music speak for itself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think you hear that a lot, leaving things open to interpretation, and that single image on the album cover definitely does that. I think 50 people might see 50 different things from it. So, and my guess is that's sort of what you want in a way.
Yeah, totally. We're not going to be super overt, hit you on the head with things all the time. That being said, our last album had a pretty almost literal representation of one of the songs on the album, which was awesome too. That was done by Jason Spencer of Killer Napkins, who's an incredible St. Louis artist. See his stuff all over town, murals. He just did a great t-shirt design for us as well. So yeah, so that one's definitely one of those things where, looking at it, just take what you want from it, for the cop-out answer. But right. It really is that way in a lot of ways.
We talk to a lot of musicians, and I tend to ask this question a lot, but specifically, I think it's relevant in this situation because it seems like you guys' art and your album, and like you're saying, the order and the flow of things is very important to you. In the day and age that we're in now, with attention spans being as little as they are, or as affected as they are, how do you manage those two things with producing art that's super important and what you think is relevant and a message that you think is relevant with the way the world is now?
I think in that regard, we just kind of have to do what we know and what we've done. I mean, we're not a young band. We are not TikTok stars. Right. We're not going to be, blowing up the algorithm with 20-second sound bites from our songs, which is fine. And people that do that, that's also, that's what you have to do to adapt. And if that's what the direction is, that's what it is. Like, it doesn't do any good for us to kind of, get bummed out about it or complain about it. We just can only do what we can do. So hopefully there's still people out there that can appreciate kind of long form albums and things like that. And, this kind of attention to detail. And I think there is. I think there's still a really solid base of music listeners out there that enjoy that kind of stuff. I know we certainly do. And we still have favorite bands that are putting out stuff in that way. If we got to do a couple of things, for social media that normally we wouldn't do because we're a bunch of 40-year-old dorks, whatever, that's fine. But it's for us, it's just we'll just keep playing what we play and hope people like it, and if we can beat the algorithm, great.
You mentioned being 40, and I'm 40 as well. Do you think think some of that's maturity? You just kind of are what you are at this point, and people are either going to get on board or they're not?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me personally, I definitely struggled with, playing the, I want people to like this game, in my 20s and things like that, and not understanding, the just be true to yourself is more endearing, I think, at times to people when it's just like, listen, this is what it is. The other thing too, I think, is just kind of like softening up a little bit and just not, having the energy, like if you place the energy on being mad or upset about whatever current state of things, that's energy taken away from being able to be creative or things like that. And I'm not, I can't do that anymore. So I can only focus on, making the things that I like and listening to those things and being happy for people that are doing well in their own way. I think it's a much more productive way to kind of operate as opposed to, any succumbing to hating on whatever is going on, which I certainly have done in the past. I am as guilty as anybody of being a purist in certain ways. But these days I just kind of, very much like, all right, this is what we have and this is what we're doing. And I'm happy with that. And, hope other people enjoy it too.
We have Phil from the Gorge here. Mechanical Fiction, the new album out now everywhere. We had the release show on Friday, August 4th at Off Broadway with The Lion's Daughter. We actually were lucky enough to get our hands on an advanced copy of The Lion's Daughter new record as well. Killer. Ooh. Phenomenal. And then Blight Future as well. Doors are at 7, shows at 8. All ages, $12. Vulgar Display, a podcast, will be there. We're excited about it. Loving this new album. Thanks for joining us today, Phil.
Chad, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.